Welcome to the very first episode of Taiwan Insider, a weekly roundup of news brought to you by Radio Taiwan International.
Every week, we'll give you an inside look at the top and most interesting stories coming out of Taiwan. I'm Natalie So.
And I'm Andrew Ryan, and here's your week in a minute.
Taiwan is one step closer to legalizing same-sex marriage. This week, lawmakers voted to send a bill on same-sex marriage forward for the second of 3 readings. Japan has turned down a request to hold bilateral security talks. President Tsai told a Japanese newspaper that Taiwan and Japan should build stronger dialogue on security issues. However, Tokyo says its ties with Taiwan are unofficial. Taiwan has called on the WHO to investigate its exclusion from a meeting on flu vaccines in Beijing. Taiwan's invitation did not arrive until the day of the event. President Tsai says the government will support Taiwan's orchid producers. At a major orchid show, she said this will boost Taiwan's efforts at orchid diplomacy. Taiwan is having its warmest winter in 72 years. Experts say more work needs to be done to determine if this warm spell is linked to global warming. And the Dao people of Orchid Island have begun their flying fish season. Tourists are urged to respect local customs and taboos. And that's your week in a minute.
After having a look at some of the top stories this week, we've all come up with a word of the week. Now, Andrew, can you guess what my word of the week is?
All right. So happy to be here. Soft power. No, soft.
Yeah, well, soft or soft power. I only have one word, so.
Soft.
So the reason why I chose soft is, first of all, we saw some kind of bad news in the area of hard power, where Japan rejected our offer for bilateral security talks. But in the area of soft power, we see Taiwan making a lot of progress, such as equal rights for the LGBT community and same-sex, and that just shows how tolerant Taiwan society is. And also, as we'll see in #Taiwan, Taiwan's healthcare is being praised around the world, and that's another plus for Taiwan's soft power. And also, Women's Day is coming up tomorrow. We have a female president that shows a lot about how women are doing in Taiwan. We also are one of the top in the world in terms of political participation in women. So I think that has a lot to say about Taiwan's soft power.
I like that. I like it. Soft. That's a great word of the week.
Yes.
All right. Are you ready for my word of the week?
All right.
All right. Can you guess what my word is, Natalie? All right.
Equal? Equality?
Close. Yes. However, I have a little question mark.
Question.
And the reason why I have a little question mark there is of course, because we know about the news about Taiwan moving forward with same-sex marriage legislation. There are some concerns with the law, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that in today's Taiwan Explained. So the question is, are same-sex couples going to be equal to other couples here in Taiwan once marriage passes? And we do think it will happen, and we'll think that Taiwan will become the first country in Asia to allow same-sex marriage.
So Andrew, should I put these on the shelf?
Yes, let's do it.
Alrighty.
All right.
Equality and soft.
Yeah, you have to be careful what order you put it in, right?
Or soft equality.
Today it works. I can imagine some scenarios where it wouldn't work so well.
All right, so we're going to go to our top story, which is that same-sex marriage is advancing in Taiwan. Taiwan moved one step closer to becoming the first country in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage.
That's right. Now, on February 21st, Taiwan's cabinet approved a draft bill that legalizes same-sex marriage. Premier Su Tseng made the announcement in this video on his Facebook page. He also called for understanding and tolerance toward everyone in Taiwan, regardless of their sexual orientation.
Now, the law has been introduced in the legislature, but before we get to that, we take a look back at how we got here.
Activists have been calling for same-sex marriage and for equal rights since the 1980s. On May 24th of 2017, Taiwan's High Court ruled that it is unconstitutional to not include same-sex couples in the definition of marriage. They gave lawmakers 2 years to amend that law.
Last November in local elections, the same-sex marriage movement was dealt a major setback. And that's because in 5 referendum, voters expressed their opinions about same-sex marriage and gender education in schools. In all 5 referenda, opponents of same-sex marriage outvoted supporters by 2-1.
Now, this put the ruling Democratic Progressive Party in a tight position because they have to balance the results of the referenda and, of course, the High Court's decision on same-sex marriage. So their solution is a draft bill, which they are calling the Enforcement Act of Judicial Yuan Interpretation Number 748. So what does the draft bill include, and what does it mean for same-sex couples in Taiwan? That's the subject of today's Taiwan Explained. In today's Taiwan Explained, I'm going to tell you about the same-sex marriage draft bill which the cabinet has sent to Taiwan's legislature. It is called the Enforcement Act of Judicial Yuan Interpretation Number 748, and boy, is it a mouthful.
That is a long name.
You know, it's named after the High Court decision which gave the legislature 2 years to pass legislation on same-sex marriage. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's Taiwan Explained.
Well, you have 60 seconds. Angie, are you ready?
I think so.
Go.
All right. So I want to begin by talking about wording. The bill contains the words marriage and spouse, and that makes it clear that we're talking about same-sex marriage and not a civil partnership. Now, in order to get married, both members of the couple must be 18 or older and unmarried, and also they must be monogamous. That may seem a little unusual, but that's already part of Taiwan's marriage laws. Now, what about the rights? Under the bill, same-sex couples would enjoy a number of rights, including filing joint taxes as a right, inheriting property, making medical decisions for spouse, and also adopting biological children. Now, it does not include other types of adoption or surrogacy, and in the case of this very high-profile couple, which recently got married in Miaoli in northern Taiwan, if one of the members of the couple is a foreign national, then this same-sex marriage draft bill does not cover you either. So some of the legislation may not cover everyone and may need to be amended.
Your time is up.
We may need new legislation.
All right.
It's hard to do in 60 seconds.
You almost got it. Well, some people are saying this law is a compromise. So why is this the case?
Well, I mean, it does grant important rights to same-sex couples. So you can get married, jointly file taxes, and it does have other rights that it offers. But there are things it doesn't cover, as I mentioned. So no surrogacy, no non-biological adoption, and also it doesn't cover foreign nationals. So we don't know what will happen in those scenarios. Also, same-sex marriage advocates were hoping that the government would amend the civil code, so that's the pre-existing marriage laws in Taiwan, to include same-sex couples. However, opponents were hoping that they would create a separate law, which they have done, so a sort of separate but equal scenario. Of course,
so it is a compromise.
It is a compromise. And what's interesting too is you also see in the name of the bill itself, you don't see the word marriage at all. Right. So that might be part of the compromise.
But you see it inside the bill.
Inside the bill, that's correct.
Interesting how they compromise, huh?
Yeah.
So, well, let's take a look at how the bill is doing, the latest developments in this report from Tuesday.
Outside the legislature on Tuesday, protesters call out slogans. They say that the cabinet's same-sex marriage bill goes against public opinion. Inside the legislature, opposition KMT and PFP lawmakers echo that opinion. KMT lawmaker Lai Shibao says 20 members of his party oppose the bill, and they're hoping to build that opposition. PFP lawmaker Li Hongjun says the ruling party should consider public opinion rather than forcing through a haphazard solution. Meanwhile, Premier Su Zhenchang showed up early at the legislature on Tuesday to talk about the bill at hand.
Give
yourself and others some space, he says. We hope that everyone can embrace differences and show some kindness. Before the vote, opposition lawmakers hold up signs in protest, but they can't stop the bill from advancing. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party has the numbers it needs to send the bill to a second reading, with a vote of 59 to 24. Now the bill enters a month of discussion and an article-by-article review.
All right, so the bill is in the second reading. Andrew, what happens next?
So what happens next is that lawmakers have to wait for a month. It's sort of like a cooling down period. We talked to a legal expert who said that what happens is you have to wait for that period of time After it's over, then lawmakers from the ruling and opposition parties can enter negotiations, discuss possible changes, and then they go through the bill article by article. And changes can still be made at that point. However, it's unlikely that the two sides are going to find common ground. And of course, the ruling party, the majority in the legislature, they have all the votes that they need in order to pass the second reading. Once it passes the second reading, then the third reading is largely just a formality.
What about those opposed to the bill? Do you think that they're going to try to do something to counteract it, to prevent it from passing?
Well, it's hard to say what the opposition is going to try to do. They could try to pass another law which would curb the rights that are afforded in this same-sex marriage bill. They could also try to delay it, but even if they delay it past May 24th, which is the deadline, at that point, then same-sex couples in Taiwan can go to a household registration office and then register to marry in the same way that other couples do. So that is a hard deadline. If they don't come up with legislation, then you can get married in Taiwan if you're a same-sex couple. So I have a question for you, actually. We've seen over the last 2 years a really dramatic shift in the way, in the path that this legislation has taken. I mean, only recently have we seen the legislation, but the push for same-sex marriage has really had some ups and downs. What have you thought about that path that it's taken?
Well, I think it's been quite dramatic. I mean, a couple years ago, the High Court, all of a sudden it seemed like out of the blue, but it probably wasn't out of the blue. I think activists have been working for a long time. But they guaranteed the rights within 2 years. So that was very dramatic.
And possibly following on the heels of legislation in other countries like the United States.
That's right. Yeah. But then just last year, it seemed like almost everyone's against it. I mean, 2/3, right, that voted was against that. So then you're thinking, well, what does that mean? And so now they're trying to balance the two, I think, in the best way that they can.
Well, I think a lot of people didn't even have it on their radar. It wasn't something that people in Taiwan were even really talking about, at that point. Only recently, when it became a news item, did people start to really come out for or against it. And of course, the opposition is highly funded and well organized. So they were able to create change ahead of the referendum.
Yeah, so this is a very exciting story. I know that the whole world is looking at Taiwan because Taiwan is a pioneer, right, in Asia in LGBT rights. Yeah. So we'll be keeping you up to date with that story, with that bill. Up next, a segment we call Taiwan by Number. Every week in Taiwan by Number, we're going to introduce a story to you via a number. Now, this week's number is 1,500. Now, this has to do with domestic tourism. Okay. Andrew, do you have a guess what this number may mean?
I mean, can you give me a hint? It could be anything.
I'm not going to give you a hint.
No, let me try it. 1,500, domestic tourism. Is that 1,500?
It has to do with money.
It's money. How much it costs to stay at a B&B in Hualien?
Some BBs, maybe. You wish, right? Right. Okay, well, let's first take a look at the video.
Okay.
By all measures, a recent government program promoting winter tourism in Taiwan was a success. Subsidies offered to tourists convinced over 2 million travelers to take to the road. The subsidy program drove up room occupancy rates at hotels across Taiwan by 20 to 30%. It also generated 11.5 billion NT dollars, or 373 million US dollars, in revenue. In the hopes of keeping up the momentum from winter, the Transportation Ministry has announced a subsidy plan for travel between April and June. Tour groups can receive up to 50,000 NT dollars, or 1,600 US dollars. Meanwhile, individual travelers can get 500 NT dollars, or 16 US dollars, off any room booked between a Sunday and a Thursday. Travelers between 18 and 40 years of age can also get a subsidy if they travel to outlying islands or stay at bed and breakfasts in small towns. However, with a night at a 3-star hotel costing an average of 100 US dollars, there are some skeptics who doubt this amount will be of much help to travelers. John Van Trieste, RTI News.
All right, Andrew, the number means $1,500 is the maximum subsidy some people will be able to get to travel domestically in the spring.
Ah, so if you can't find that B&B that's 1,500, then you can pay for a night.
Right, so this is how it's going to work. The government is giving out subsidies to everyone, actually, of 500 NT dollars if you book a room between Sunday and Thursday.
Okay, so it's a weekday.
Right, during April through June. But if you're 18 to 40 years old, and if you travel to an outlying island or stay at a B&B in a remote city, you can get up to $1,500.
Oh, okay.
So that's the largest you can get.
Okay.
So basically it's $500 for most people. So what do you think of the subsidies? Do you think they're going to get people moving going to different places?
My understanding is that I'm not eligible for those subsidies, right? Because I'm a foreign national.
I wonder why they did that.
Well, I mean, I think it's giving, preferential treatment to citizens, right?
That's true.
I understand that. I can understand that.
So you don't feel too bad.
Membership has its privileges, right?
So actually, some people, there's been mixed reactions.
Mm-hmm.
The government says that 70% of the travel during this time of year is done just on day trips. So they want to encourage people to stay overnight.
Okay.
Whereas some hotel operators aren't happy because some people already booked them, but now they're asking for the discount.
Oh.
And they're saying, we don't need your help, and now you're not helping us by giving a discount.
I mean, I think it's kind of a good idea, and it makes people happy too, right? It keeps your...
Sure. I don't think weekdays actually a peak time for most people.
Yeah, so even if it is a peak season, a weekday, most people do have to go to work and go to school.
Right.
So, well, hopefully it'll boost tourism.
Yeah.
They do need a little bit of help, the tourism sector does. So up next, we're going to turn our attention to what's trending on social media here in Taiwan, and it's a segment we're calling #Taiwan.
Okay, a Facebook post by an American who is in Taiwan went viral this week, and it is entitled, "Went to the ER in Taiwan, the horrors of socialized medicine, a first-hand experience." And his name is Kevin Boziet. And it went viral. Over 200,000 people shared this post.
Wow.
And what happened was he was really sick. He didn't know what he had. He was vomiting all night long, and he was feeling dizzy and nausea. And so his Taiwanese roommate, took him to a hospital, to the ER at the National Taiwan University. He got an IV. He got diagnosed with a very severe case of the stomach flu.
Oof.
They gave him medicine. He was better in just a few days. And he was so happy that it only cost him $80
wow.
without insurance. So it was like a miracle to him. And if he had insurance, it would be just a fraction of the price.
Right.
And at the end of his post, he said, "America, it's time to stop making excuses."
Mm-hmm.
So that was basically, telling Americans, because there's a big debate now about if there should be Medicare for all. A lot of U.S. Presidential hopefuls are talking about this.
I heard that somebody even brought it up with Bernie Sanders.
That's right.
Too.
They brought his post up, and he's looking at Taiwan's national health care.
So not just a trending post, it's a post which actually could have, some influence on at least the discussion in the United States.
That's kind of exciting. So I think that's, in that way, Taiwan is really shining, right?
Yeah, for sure. Last time I went to the hospital in the States, last 2 trips I made, one was for food poisoning, one was for pneumonia. Those 2 hospital visits cost me $2,000 together.
Are you serious?
Yes. Similar trip in Taiwan would only cost a fraction of the price. Again, like he said, $80 US as an uninsured person. I'm uninsured in the United States. If you have insurance, if you have health insurance in Taiwan, it's even cheaper.
It's probably like $10 or 15.
Or less, yeah,
right.
Potentially, yeah.
So that's something exciting, and it made it all the way to the Washington Post, right?
That's right. I have to say though, I was a little bit skeptical at first because actually the week before this post started trending in the United States, one of our coworkers brought this to me and asked me if we should do this story.
Yeah, I remember you saying that's not a big story. It's just one American's opinion, right? Who cares?
Well, let me show you. This is what the local news were, how they were reporting it. So our translation of the headline here is, "American student goes to ER, posts horror story about Taiwan's health insurance." If you ask me, is that the kind of story we should be doing? It sounds like just a random foreigner thinks something about something. Why is that a headline? I'm a random foreigner too, right? What I say is not necessarily newsworthy. If it's an expert, then it seems to be like something that would be worthwhile discussing. Right. But once it becomes a story in a different country, once it starts trending, once it goes viral, here's the Washington Post version of the story. An American got sick in Taiwan. He came back with a tale of the, quote, horrors of socialized medicine. And, you know, I have to be honest, I'm a bit of a sucker for a clickbaity headline.
Horror. You think, what kind of horror was that?
My goodness,
what happened to him in the ER room?
Yeah, I mean, so that's I mean, and it's also the opposite of what he really felt, too. So this is the kind of headline that a lot of people click on.
I'm glad it got a lot of traction, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it'll help America.
And it's you know, it is definitely offering a different version of what healthcare can be like and what health insurance can be like. Okay, that's it for this week's #Taiwan. And if you have any ideas of stories that are trending, you can hit us up on social media on Facebook, Twitter, or also, of course, you can leave a comment below or send us an email.
Well, tomorrow is Women's Day. It's very exciting. And I had the opportunity to speak with two inspiring female entrepreneurs whose companies are making life better for women. Mae O'Malley started Paragon Legal. It's one of America's biggest female-owned legal services firms, and her firm allows lawyers to work on a project basis, thus enabling mothers like herself to have a much better work-life balance. I also interviewed Vivian Chiang, and she is the co-founder of two companies, Speedsmith and Orbit Baby, which both offer great products for children.
So with their successful careers and families, these women seem to have it all, but you might not want to say that to them. So let's have a look at this clip.
You have wonderful companies that you've created. These companies also make life better for women, which is very meaningful. And I know you're active in your communities. So what do you think about the notion of women having it all, doing it all? I mean, how do you guys make it work?
Well, okay, don't get me started on this one. I have major issues with the terminology, having it all.
Yeah, tell me what you think of it.
Well, I just feel like it puts so much pressure on women, right? Like, why is it that we need to be doing all these things at the same time? And you never hear this phrase being used with regards to men,
That's
ever.
true.
Right? So I don't know why. I don't quite understand what that situation is, but I think that, you know, we already have so much pressure on ourselves to then have this external expectation that for some reason, you know, you're only a great woman if you can work, have kids, and be a leader in your community at the same time. That's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So,
but you're doing that, Mae. So.
Well, okay, first of all, I think that I've been really fortunate because I think to the extent that you buy into this notion of having all those things at the same time, that I've been really lucky, but I had to build it for myself. You know, I basically had to build a company to give it to myself. But also, you know, I feel like to the extent that women can maybe have different times in their life when they're really focused on kids, and then maybe there's another part of their life where they can have a career, and then another part of their life where they can be more involved with civic things, that's a great way to put it all together versus having to do it all at the same time. So that's kind of my take on that.
Oh. Is that how you worked it out, partly for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely was in a phase where I was trying to focus on my family, but, you know, I'm in an industry in terms of the law where if you step out for too long, you can never go back. So that's why, for me, I started to have to find a way to be able to do it part-time while I was raising kids. And I would have to say that up until very recently, I feel like I've been fairly selfish in my life, like very focused on my kids and my family versus really going out there and doing a lot of stuff for the community. I mean, I sit, as you know, on a lot of different boards, but my hope now that I've stepped out of my company and sold it is that I can focus more of my life on truly meaningful work for others.
Sounds good. And what about you, Vivian? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think have it all is so hard. I mean, it's such a loaded phrase, and it really just puts too much pressure, I think, on women. You know, I think if you're in your 20s, you have no idea really yet what it means to be a mom or have a career or trying to juggle all these things at once. I think, like Mae, it was about trying to create something that I owned and felt like I had control over so that I could kind of dictate my hours, right? Because once you have kids, it's really hard to work full time and then also, you know, take care of kids. It's like pretty much impossible unless you have a really good community set up or you're doing your own thing. And I think what's unique about Orbit was that it was a baby company. So, you know, when we went to trade shows, I would bring my babies, right? And nobody had anything to say. They'd be like, oh, great, so cute, you know, because we were in the industry.
Great marketing.
Yeah. And So it was a natural fit.
Free models, right?
Free models, you know, and not to say it was easy, because, you know, we would go to trade show, work all day, and then we would come back to our kids and we want to hang out with them. And, you know, it was tough, but I think, you know, if you can create an environment that allows you to sort of work on something you're passionate about and at the same time, you know, be a first-time mom and then have a great family, it's not easy. It's a big challenge.
But that's partly why you started your companies, is to create the kind of lifestyle you want.
Yeah,
Well,
largely, yeah.
definitely Maze in that
Sure.
category.
Yeah, I think both of us. I mean, just in terms of the flexibility and the scheduling. And in my case, you know, not necessarily intending to build a company out of it, but, you know, like we discussed earlier, you come upon a solution that works for both clients and attorneys, it can grow. It has legs. So
That's wonderful. And what do you think about how you worked out your own work-life balance, or, you know, your time with your family with work? Because when you're starting a company, I know my husband is an entrepreneur, you really focused on, you can be totally, you know, focused on work if you're not careful. Is there any way that you balance things out for yourself?
I think it really helped that both my husband and I were in it together, because I would never have to explain to him, like, well, I just have to do this now, you know, or I have to stay up totally late, because we were in it together. We kind of understood all the schedules. But because of that, the trade-off was that as a result, it was hard for us not to leave work at work, because we worked together. So we had to put in a lot of rules. Like, for example, we always had dinner together as a family at 6, but then at that point we would not be allowed to talk shop anymore at the dinner table, right? Because otherwise we would just be working all the way through with our kids around.
That's a great rule.
Yeah.
6 o'clock is pretty early for dinner.
6 o'clock.
but then you go back to work after dinner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we go back. Our kids would go to bed at like 7:38, right? And then we could go back to work. And then, you know, I think we always made it a point to exercise, because we felt like that was key to having balance in your life. So there are certain things you can try to do, but at the end, it is not necessarily an easy thing to always find balance.
Wow, two amazing entrepreneurs, Natalie. You know, I really thought the part where they were talking about having it all and why that's such a pressure for women, I thought that was really interesting.
That was. At first I was thinking they're going to give me some great insights on how they have it all, you know, how they do everything. But then she got kind of upset at the... I mean, but I really appreciate her being very honest. I mean, it's impossible to feel like you've done everything well as a woman.
And it's not fair for women to have to...
Feel like you have to do everything well.
Men should have to as well.
Right. And men don't have the pressure. I think partly it's because they don't feel like they have to spend all that time with their children, whereas we kind of feel like we should be when we're not. And we have all these struggles, and so it's a lot of pressure when we try to have it all and do it all. And so
a lot of what they were saying resonated with you as well. How about for your career?
Well, I'm glad that, I mean, my career, it's we have more flexible time, right? Hours, so which I love, and I think that has helped a lot. I mean, sometimes it's very busy, and sometimes I feel like I wish I were home eating dinner with my family. I mean, I feel the struggle all the time, but I'm very happy that my family's very supportive of me. My husband's very supportive of me, and actually in the interview, they talk about their husbands being very supportive, and they also talk about how we as women should be very supportive of each other and of ourselves, that we should be kind to ourselves and not give us so much pressure.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something to remember for Women's Day, that we should be kind to ourselves as women and to the women around us.
That's right. And Women's Day, again, of course, is March 8th.
That's
so
right.
just around the corner. Was there anything in the interview that surprised you?
Let me see. Well, I think, you know, I think for her, it was kind of an accidental success.
Which one?
Mae O'Malley. She has one of the biggest, you know, firms in San Francisco run by a woman, and one of the biggest legal firms run by a woman in the United States. And I think if you do something so well, that it might grow organically and just be amazing. I think that was very inspiring, because she was just doing it for herself, creating this project-based firm, and it just grew.
Wow.
So I think that was very inspiring. That she's an accidental entrepreneur, and she sold her company too.
Wow.
Now she's free.
Wow.
She doesn't have to work.
So wait, she is kind of having it all right.
She does have it her way.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
That's an amazing successor. I always love hearing stories like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's a neat interview, and if you want to see the whole interview, you can watch the full clip. It's part of Natalie's show Taiwan Today, and you can find that on RTI English's YouTube channel. Today, we are going to leave you with a parting shot. Let's have a look at this clip of video. And this is the cherry blossoms, which are in bloom here in Taiwan, just in time for the Cherry Blossom Festival in Alishan, which kicks off on Saturday, March 9th.
And there are many other places in Taiwan where you can enjoy cherry blossoms. In Danshui, Taoyuan's Lala Mountain, Yangmingshan, Beitou, Xingse, Nantou, Jade Mountain, Hualien, and Awanda National Forest. So they are all over Taiwan. You don't have to go to Japan or other places.
Or Washington, D.C., right?
Right, really.
I just discovered that the Riverside Park near my house in New Taipei City has cherry blossoms.
My gas station has them.
What? All right, that's
all
a bit
around
much.
the gas station.
Very cool, though. Cool to see.
Yeah. We hope you enjoyed this inside look at Taiwan this week. Leave a comment below and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.
You can also visit us online at english.rti.org.tw or send us story ideas and feedback to rti@rti.org.tw. For Taiwan Insider, I'm Andrew Ryan.
I'm Natalie So. See you next week.
Bye-bye.